Welcome, hello, we are back. Last time we saw the first Shrine Keepers League match between Banter and Rody, with Rody taking the 2-0. Today we have what seems to be two matches between one in the Sea Guardians League, one of the other divisions, as well as afterwards the first match in the Sacred Flames division. Starting in a bit, we will soon have our first teams in the Sea Guardians play. The Liquidation Golisopods versus Celestials. Single Sum running the Liquidation Golisopods while M-Key is running Celestials. Both of these teams have what I would say are very, very different draft strategies. One thing that is very interesting to note is I believe Single Sum drafted their Megas very late, with Mega Excadrill and Mega Skarmory going at the 8th and 10th picks, while MK pretty much immediately committed to a Mega Meganium pick, as well as drafting a Mega Kangaskhan very late into this draft. This draft is very interesting just because neither of these teams have particularly fast Pokemon. The two fastest are on the Liquidation Golisopods, with both the Frostlass and Mega Skarmory at 110 base speed. Meanwhile, Celestial's fastest Pokemon is the Mega version of the Kangaskhan at 100 base speed. One important thing to note though is that this Mega Kangaskhan, while it does have to hold the Mega Stone due to being the Mega Pokemon that was drafted, it does not necessarily have to Mega Evolve. With the ability Scrappy letting it hit ghost types with its normal or fighting type moves, it could be very important in dealing with this Ceruledge, who could pose to be a massive threat to this Mega Meganium and its grass typing versus the Ceruledge 2x effective fire typing. When we take a look at the Liquidation Golisopods themselves, their very first pick in the draft, which in my opinion was very surprising, was the 15-point Sableye. Sableye has seen a very strong rise in the meta, especially with the Archaludon Rain team, but in general just being a very nice prankster Pokemon with access to an insane amount of supportive utility, commonly seen bringing both screens Reflect and Light Screen. We'll see if today maybe MKey will have an answer for those potential screens, or if Single Sum even brings Sableye in the first place. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, MKey took Incineroar with their first round pick at 18 points. A little bit on the cheaper side just due to Incineroar not being super great in this against the current meta Pokemon, but Incineroar is still Incineroar with its very strong bulk, pretty solid typing, and of course Intimidate, which you would always like. Single Sum does have the Paldean Tauros Aqua, which does in fact have Intimidate. However, MKey, with their second round pick, took Empoleon. Now, Empoleon does have the ability Competitive, which would potentially deter a possible Intimidate. In my opinion, looking at these two teams, it's very possible that due to Celestials not having the strongest weather control in this, with having zero weather setters and having no anti-weather, compared to Single Sum having the Tyranitar and the Mega Excadrill with the Sand Rush ability, could pose to be a very strong threat that could be difficult to deal with for the Celestial side, just because Single Sum pretty much has free weather unless Celestials MK decides to bring manual weather setup on one of their Pokemon. Single Sum also has the Mega Skarmory. I am personally expecting the Tyranitar and Mega Excadrill to come out here. However, it is important to note that they do have other potentials with the Villain, the Redirection with the Rage Powder, as well as, of course, the Sableye, the Tauros Aqua being very flexible Pokemon, potential Sweep Pokemon in Ceruledge with a potential bulk up set, and some other underrated Pokemon with the Flapple and the Alchemy, which allegedly could prove to be a very large surprise. Celestials, on the other hand, has just a very solid overall roster. Incineroar, Dragonite are pretty much two Pokemon, I would say, that you can, and they're in the game. Starting here, we have the lead of Shiny Sableye and Frostlass against the Dragonite and Incineroar. These two I just mentioned as being two Pokemon you could bring into pretty much any game. The Dragonite is himself using Tailwind, giving MT the speed control in this game, which could prove very crucial. Looking in the back, we see the Empoleon with very likely competitive that could counter the Paldean Aquos Tauros. The Mega Meganium, which could be in the back. Mega Meganium, if you don't have a good way of handling it, could completely destroy you with its ability that lets it to act as if Sun was always set up, despite it not actually being set up, which allows it to use moves like I forget what the move is called, but with the ability Mega Soul, it can use moves like Solar Blade or I guess generic stab sun moves, which are boosted in, or fire moves, which are boosted in the sun, or Weather Ball even, which would become a fire type because it serves as a sun. A Flare Blitz coming out from the Incineroar straight into the Frostlass. It is super effective. No great answers. We see the Mega Meganium count out over the Dragonite. That is one down for the single sum side. That is very unfortunate. Into the back, I'm expecting potentially a Sterilez switch. And we have the Mega Skarmory, or we have the Skarmory instead. This Skarmory does in fact hold the Mega Stone, so it could Mega Evolve. Looking at the rest of their team, this is in fact the only Pokemon in this team with the Mega Stone. So this is pretty much guaranteed a Mega Skarmory happening here. One thing to note is that with the Weather Ball, if this Mega Meganium has a Weather Ball, it will do super effective special attack damage onto this Skarmory, which is a very defensively orientated Pokemon, which could pick up an Oko unless this Skarmory is extremely special defensively bulky. Brings back the Sableye and brings out the Paldean Aqua Tauros. The Meganium Mega Evolves here. It is importantly not the Intimidate version of this Tauros, I believe. Because if it was Intimidate, then we would have seen the Tauros drop the attack stats of the opposing two Pokemon, which means it does have a different ability. The Skarmory goes for Protect, and the Mega Meganium both going for the Protect, trying to scout each other's moves, while the Incineroar tries to connect a Flare Blitz. Paldean Aqua Tauros does learn both Anger Point and Kachu. I personally think it is Kachu here just because I don't believe that Anger Point is very strong. It only really works if you can guarantee a critical hit, and just looking here, there's not really any Pokemon that can land critical hits with like some sort of boosted critical hit move. Brings back the Mega Meganium for the Dragonite, brings back the Incineroar for the Empoleon. Just a game of switches at this point. Let's see what the Wave Crash into the Empoleon. This is extremely resisted. Does not take yet. Barely takes any damage from a 120 base power Wave Crash. Ellen is cleared out, likely bringing in a Dragonite to regain that speed control. Sableye here does have Prankster though. At this point, all four Pokemon on both sides have been revealed. We'll see if they make any adaptations in the future. A close combat revealed, super effective into the Empoleon, the fighting type against the steel type. And that is now 3-2-3. Bring back out the Incineroar. With the Intimidate dropping, the Paldean Aqua Tauros is now -1 defense, -1 special defense, and -1 and -1 attack, so this Paldean Aquataurus is very likely not really doing any damage. A wave crash into the Incineroar might kill it, however, the Incineroar is still a very, very bulky Pokemon. In terms of speed control here, the Paldean Taurus Aqua does in fact go first with the 100 base speed. Or actually, Sableye goes first if they use a status move because of the Prankster. If the timer is over, then what happens is it will go to the person. The victory goes to the person with more Pokemon left on the field. If there is the same amount of Pokemon left, it will go to whoever has the highest HP percentage. Yes, this is the first match. Using an Encore onto the Incineroar does not work because Incineroar is in fact a Dark-type Pokemon, and Dark types are completely immune from Prankster moves. A Tailwind setup from the Dragonite, giving it back the speed control, while the Paldean Aquataurus does in fact go out due to its stat drops and bringing out the Skarmory, which has not Mega Evolved yet. Skarmory, when at its default form, has 3 different abilities, while the Mega version only has 1 ability in Stalwart. Now, Stalwart as an ability allows the Pokemon to ignore the moves of the opposing side. That redirects attacks. In this matchup, I believe none of the Pokemon on the opposing side can redirect. That is only really you can see Rage Powder or Follow Me, which MK did not bring into this matchup. In fact, MK does not actually have any redirectors on their team. At this point, it's pretty much just a game of switches. We'll see if either of them can manage to find a advantage position. We have the Mega Meganium in the back, which is a pretty strong threat. It's only weak to the flying type moves of the Skarmory, and other than that, I believe it is great into the Paldean Aquataurus, and it's okay into the Sableye. Parting Shot into the Paldean Aquataurus, making sure that this Aquataurus cannot do great damage. While they bring back out the Dragonite in the back. Wave Crash into the Dragonite with the -1 attack drop does not really do much, and it's not very effective either. Could potentially have Rock Pikachu over Intimidate just due to the fact that their Empoleon does in fact have competitive, which could be completely disastrous if they were to get that boost from the Taurus. Interestingly, in the back here, did in fact bring the Spiritomb and the Bastiodon. A Breaking Swipe pretty much does, I think that's half of its HP. Dazzling Gleam, just 2 AoE moves. Encore here unfortunately doesn't work because since Sableye has the Prankster ability, it goes first, but since neither of these Pokemon have actually made any moves, then it just fails. The Berry comes out, revealing that it reduces the super effective damage from the Mega Meganium, letting the Sableye live. Unfortunately, there's not really any great Encore targets here. Both Breaking Swipe and Dazzling Gleam are very strong into the current 2 Pokemon out, and an Encore would not really help that. This is the Sea Guardians League, yeah. The one with 8 players in it. Disable into the Dazzling Gleam. Now note that this is not a choice scarf or anything, so they will not be resorting to struggle. However, another Wave Crash into the Dragonite doesn't really do too much damage. A second Breaking Swipe, this should kill the Sableye, and it does. This Paldean This Tauros Aqua is now -2 attack with not any great ways of dealing damage. The Rindo Berry coming out.
Verfickten Punkt.
Two berries that were very good into this Mega Brigadium. However, the Mega Brigadium is so strong with its Mega Soul ability that it's still so hard to deal with. With its 120 base power move, and it has a clean first game for MT. As we set up for this second round, we get a quick look at the full teams here with Celestials on the left and Liquidation Golisopods on the right. I would say the most interesting thing to me is Liquidation Golisopods deciding to completely forego the weather strategy when they picked up the 30 points worth of Tyranitar and Mega Excadrill with the Sand team later on in the draft, deciding to not bring that into this matchup today. Possibly just due to being worried about the Mega Megadium completely destroying them with their fire and grass type moves. Into this matchup, there's a couple of things that could happen. Early on, there were just some really crucial moves. I think the Flare Blitz splits into the Frostlass, the Oko that was picked up by the Incineroar, who has a crazy impressive attack stat for its high bulk. The same lead comes out from MT with the Incineroar and the Dragonite, while a slightly different lead comes out from the single sum side. Frostlass still in the front, however, instead of Sableye, brings out the Tauros Aqua in the front. This does, in fact, potentially threaten the Incineroar due to the Wave Crash being a stab super effective move onto the Incineroar. However, the -1 attack drop is very important here that could potentially help the Incineroar live a Wave Crash. Frostlass here does in fact have the Ice typing though, which could be very good into the Dragonite with its Dragon Flying type. The Triple Axle, extremely effective, but it only hits once. Triple Axle is a 90% accurate move, and it lets the Dragonite set up the Tailwind here. Another thing to note is that Frostlass does in fact have, you would think that Frostlass is a special attacker just because Mega Frostlass uses Blizzard and Shadow Ball very commonly. However, when you look at the default Frostlass, it has 80 attack and 80 special attack, so it can run both physical and special moves with the same amount of power. I believe a 3-hit triple axle would not have killed it there. It looked like the first one did very little damage. It would probably have put the Dragonite into the yellow. The Frostlass comes back expecting a Flare Blitz from the Garchomp, or not Garchomp, the Incineroar, I imagine. Breaking Sweat, making sure that this Paldean Aqua Tauros cannot do anything with, now it's at -2 attack. Darkest Lariat into the Sableye and it kills. This is the issue with running a Prankster Pokemon. Just because commonly all the Prankster Pokemon are very frail in general. The -2 attack, even though it's super effective, even though it's 120 base power move, it doesn't even do half to the Incineroar due to the -2 attack. But as I was saying, the problem with running Prankster is sometimes if you have a unfortunate switch, it will just become very it will just die immediately just because it has no time to set up any like reflex or light screens to help mitigate damage. And Sableye in general is just a very weak Pokemon if it doesn't set up anything. The Tailwind here ensuring that these two Pokemon does have the speed control, so there is no chance of really threatening an Oko onto either of these Pokemon. An Aqua Jet comes out from the Paldean Aqua Tauros. Super effective, a crit. I was gonna say that is a lot of damage for a 40 base power move. The crit there matters because when you critical hit, the stat drops are completely ignored. A breaking swipe does in fact kill the Frostlass here. Cursed Body disabling the breaking swipe. However, now with 2 Pokemon left for the single zone side, and now it's only one with the Darkest Lariat into the Frostlass. Last Pokemon here, I honestly can't imagine a world where they can win this. It is currently 4 versus 1. A Skarmory could kill an Incineroar. Yep, very unlucky triple axles there. That's just what happens in the game of Pokemon. Fortunately, there is still 6 more weeks after this for play, so there is plenty of opportunity to make up time. However, this is what's going to be a 2-0 victory for the MK side is extremely important because every single match that you win is important, and every single loss that you prevent, the Flare Blitz securing the victory for the empty side, a clean 2-0 victory that will earn them 3 points and will put them at the top of the leaderboard standings.